There you go.
Hey traders, Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com on Sunday, November the 23rd. We are looking at the week ahead, and our thoughts are continuing with the thesis that November through April is the strongest 6 months of the year. However, NYSE and TIC cumulative continue to point to a continuation, with the caveat that, having read a very interesting article on Zero Hedge this weekend about the ramifications of China easing, as well as Draghi continuing to push for higher inflation. With easing, as you know, we are anticipating higher prices and inflation. In fact, the opposite is true, and we're seeing deflation. So we could look at it both ways, as the signal that China's economy isn't doing as well as the elite would, the politicians would like us to believe, and therein could be some problems. So we are continuing going forward with the idea of sector rotation, continuing to focus on sectors, the industry groups within that are doing well, and setting up with criteria: slow stow below 20 and turning, MACD above its signal line, and prices above the 10 EMA. First, let's look at the indices. This is a chart of the SPX weekly. Note that we're at this upper trend line. We pointed out that we tagged the 2068 level on ES futures, which was a 127 extension from this high back in September down to this low in October. We hit the 127 extension, overshot it a bit, and we pulled back. However, we do have a green stick on Elder Impulse, and we do have this large volume by price level as support right at the moving average, which is also a 382 Fibonacci level on any pullback in this direction from this pivot low to this pivot high. The 382 is right down here at the moving average. Now, slow stow is overbought, so we're expecting this to turn down. It could conceivably move a little bit higher, but we're watching for a blue stick on the Elder Impulse, along with NYMO continuing to move lower. Currently it's pushing back up. We'll get to NYMO, NYSE, and the TIC cumulative in a second. Note the SPX A50R is in overbought territory. We could see this turn down more likely. So at these highs, we're not going balls to the wall long, to say the least. Here is a chart of the NASDAQ Composite. Note that we broke above this small flag. We pulled back to the 10-period EMA. This is the daily chart, and we gapped higher. Note the black candle, which notes that we've gapped higher and we closed lower on the day. So that's some concern. We do have this volume by price level that we could see as support in a pullback scenario. Do note that slow stow is already moving lower, so there is some divergence there, but we'll watch the comp this week for any downside move. Note MACD is already turning, and we are overbought on NDX A50R. Small caps, this is the Russell 2000 weekly chart. Elder Impulse, note that we still have green sticks here. We're flagging right above the moving averages, which are moving sideways, and basically a year-long topping pattern. Bonds, we mentioned on our blog post over the weekend for 401k enthusiasts and IRA investors that we are long bonds. Note the 3 weeks here where we saw buyers step in at lows and push the prices back up. Slow stow is near oversold and starting to turn. MACD is moving sideways. We will add to our position in bonds in VBTIX. That's TLT, giving us the same signal here. This is a weekly chart. We've been moving sideways more or less in a flag after we bounced off of the midline, the 20 period moving average. This is a weekly chart again. And we're seeing slow stow turn as well on the 20-year bond. Looking at IEF, the 7-10 year, we also see the same scenario. Volume by prices showing support, and we see multiple weekly shadows here on these candles. So we're looking for upside in the near future. Note slow stow is turning here as well. So bonds look pretty good going into the weeks ahead. So here is the carry trade DBV, the Deutsche Bank Currency Harvest Fund. What you want to see here is higher prices, bullish for equities, lower prices are bearish equities. Note that the 10 period EMA here held prices after we got rejected at this upper trend line, and then we gapped up on Friday. And note the black candle just means that we gapped up and we closed lower on the day. So we'll be watching what happens with the carry trade this week. If the dollar continues to move higher and the yen lower, you can expect to see this indicator move higher. This is a US dollar Friday, and MACD's turning back up as well as stow. So we are anticipating we could see higher prices on the dollar. So at some point that's going to affect equities. Let's also take a look at the yen, which is the opposite. We continue to see lower prices. Note the candle on Friday, a shooting star, and we continue to be here in no man's land, reflecting weakness in the yen, which is also bullish for their stock market. So let's take a look at the Nikkei, which we continue to see the 10 period moving average hold prices. Will that stay? Who knows? We're going to keep an eye on the carry trade going into the week. Lastly, we're looking at the gold chart here. Note that we did hit this volume by price bar and we got rejected right there at 1205. So we'll be watching this. Slow stow is overbought. We could see this pull back in if the dollar continues to move higher this week. So let's take a look at the individual sectors. Note gold getting rejected here at this volume by price bar. We could see this push higher up to this upper trend line as slow stow is overbought, but MACD is continuing to move higher. IYR, we see real estate doing well. Nice flag, and slow stow could continue to move higher. MACD's signaling it may turn higher. Conversely, if you are in a sector that is overbought outside in the upper Bollinger Band, slow stow in overbought territory. Now this could embed as well, but just keep that in mind if you're still trading semis going into the week, that you could see a pullback in shares. So I'd be taking longs in the real estate shares, XLE as well as IYT. Transports look pretty good. Look at airlines. XBI at highs, a little triple top here. Slow stow's turning last week. Note the quick turns and moves to the upside. So you want to definitely keep that in mind if you're taking any longs going into the week. XHB, builders, outside upper Bollinger Bands, gapped higher, closed lower. Note the volume, and slow stow is overbought. We could see a overshoot and a continue to move higher, but we're starting to position with the mindset that we could see a move lower. We took DH Horton for profit over a couple of weeks on that breakout of this channel. XLB Materials, Doji outside the upper Bollinger Bands, right at this continuation of this trend line, and slow stow is looking like it's going to turn. XLF, gapped higher, moved lower. Slow stow is turning at the 50 level, and MACD is below its signal line. XLI Industrials, gap higher, close lower. Same scenario with slow stow. And of course, the remaining sectors, technology, gap higher, close lower. Now MACD looks like it wants to turn lower, and slow stow is already headed lower as well. So we could flag out. I would wait for an entry on any of the names in the technology sector. XLP, consumer staples, continuing to move higher. Gapped higher, closed lower as well. Note slow stow. MACD looks like it wants to turn. Utilities, slow stow is approaching overbought, but could see a little bit further upside. Healthcare continues to show up. However, we are turning lower on slow stow. I'd wait on entries on XLV. XLY, gapped higher, closed lower. Note the volume, and slow stow looks like it wants to move lower. So we'll be continuing to watch XLE as well as real estate shares and transports going into the week ahead. Okay? So let's get into what we're looking at this week. Remember, over the last couple of weeks, we looked at sectors and then industry groups. We started with biotech, we moved to aluminum companies, then we went to tech, hardware, and semis, then we saw prices rotate into media and broadcasting companies, and then back to biotech, tech, hardware, and semis, and of course aluminum started performing as well. So that's the mindset that we're going to use. Right now we're looking at XLE rotating in as we pointed out here. So let's take a look at some of those stocks. The sectors themselves, if we rank them by percent change, energy outperformed. If we look at the individual groups in energy and stocks, note that light sweet crude continues to move lower. Some of the stocks in the group that look really good. Baker Hughes, note the flag. Slow stow is a little overbought, so we won't go into that one. Many of these stocks are through with their distribution phase, the area where you see prices moving lower. That's phase 4. Phase 1 is when prices start to base and we see accumulation, and then we see the markup period follow, which is the longest period typically, and when we see prices continue to move higher. So basic energy services, XLE, are starting to see a basing pattern, and most of all of these stocks, as we pointed out. Biofuel breaking above a low level here. Note that it's overbought now at this point. So some of these stocks look really good. We saw a double bottom. We see basing patterns, and prices starting to move higher off of a slow stow setup. We will also see MACD above its signal line and prices above the 10-period EMA. C&J Energy, same scenario. Oversold stochastics moving higher, MACD above its signal line, nice volume, and prices above the 10-period moving average. If prices get above this Kirby level, we could see higher prices on CJES. Cheniere Energy, triangle pattern, trying to break back above this trend line, as well as this above this Kirby level. No prices, volume had tapered off during this consolidation phase, which is fairly bullish, and slow stow is overbought, so we'll wait on that one. Chesapeake looking interesting. Price slow stow getting a little bit overbought currently. Cimarex Energy looking good. Note this big volume by price or Kirby pocket here, where prices could continue to move higher. The 200-period moving average is above. MACD, the 50-period moving average is below us, and we saw buyers step in on Friday and push this back up at the close. Slow stow is moving higher. Comstock Resources, note this Kirby bar, this volume by price bar, and Kirby here, where prices could get much higher very quickly. I would target the 50-period first and then 200-period moving average. On a continuation move, note the volume is picking up, slow stow is moving higher as well. All of these look pretty similar. Note the Kirby pocket here on CNX. Prices got pushed back down on Friday, but we're off the lows. And we have this Kirby level up above, volume by price level, resistance at 43.50. Slow stow is overbought though, so we'll pass on this one. Continental Resources, looking interesting. CVR, we noted CVR Energy last week, consolidating along this trend line. Slow Stow is turning up. MACD is trying to get back above its signal line on this thinly traded name. Diamondback, one of Mikey's favorites. When it's trading right, note that we called this right back in August when we saw this volume by price level as resistance, and we got rejected at that level, and we continue to move lower, putting in lows back here in October. So we're consolidating. We see this big volume by price accumulation distribution area, so we'd like to see prices get back above 70, 77 or so for a nice long, but between here and there we could see higher prices. Note the 200 period moving average. EMES, same thing here with volume by price bars, but we're pushing above this trend line. We have the 50 period overhead as well as the 200 period. Note Slow Stow is overbought. Gas log, note the upper trend line where we tested the 50 period on Friday. We got rejected. We have this volume by price level resistance at 23. If this moves higher with Slow Stow signaling that it might and volume, we could see this upper trend line, and then of course 24 as the next level as a target. Goodrich Petroleum, nice big volume by price pocket here, Kirby pocket. We got rejected at the 50 period moving average. I think 13 is in the cards if we continue to see MACD moving higher, but we will wait on this one. Maybe this pulls back to the 10 period and we get an entry there off of support, retest, and then trade this perhaps for about a $2 or $3 move to the upside. Gulfport Energy, breaking some levels here. Slow Stow continues to push higher. HK Halcon, a trade that we took back here in the spring where prices moved higher fairly quickly. We're watching for a breakout here above the 50 period moving average and this level for possible long up to the 200 period moving average, and then to this volume by price bar up here at $5.35. Note the volume. Slow Stow is moving higher. Check this out on the weekly as well and do your homework. Stops would be below the Friday low on this if it gets rejected. This one should continue to move higher going into the week given energy is rotating in. Halliburton saw some intense volume last week. 50 million shares traded on Thursday and Friday, and we closed off the lows that we saw since October. Note Slow Stow as well. Kodiak, nice pattern here. Keeping an eye on it with Slow Stow overbought. Nabors Industries, note that if prices push back above this volume by price bar, there's a very large pocket up to 23. Of course, we have the 50 period moving average descending overhead at 1940 or so to deal with, but Slow Stow is pointing higher. MACD is above its signal line and prices are above the 10 period, so this looks pretty bullish. Noble Energy, I really like this chart. We're above this volume by price level, and we had a nice candle on Thursday and Friday. We have this level to take out and a very large volume by price pocket, Kirby pocket here, all the way up to 25 and the 200 period moving average. So we're above the 50 and the 10, and Slow Stow is turning up as well. So this one looks pretty good going into the week. Note the volume. The selling volume on this move lower was pretty intense, above average, but we're starting to see accumulation here. So we could see a move to the upside on Noble Drilling. Northern Oil and Gas, another one with a little pocket here, 50 period overhead. Slow Stow turning, MACD above its signal line, prices above the 10 period. Most of these look pretty much the same. Phillips 66 Partners, we're watching this level here, volume by price. If we can get above this level, looks pretty interesting. Slow Stow hasn't gotten oversold again yet, so we'll wait on this along with MACD, another thinly traded name. Pioneer Natural Resources, off the lows. Note Slow Stow is overbought. MACD is crossing though. Range Resources, got a trend line to deal with that it got rejected at, as well as this volume by price bar. If it gets above the two of those, we have the 200 period overhead and this very large Kirby pocket that we could trade up to the 86 level fairly quickly. Southwest Energy, SWN, note the trend line. Note all the distribution here. The base, the accumulation, phase 1. This is phase 4, then phase 1. Now phase 2 is when we take off to the upside. Obviously it's not a straight shot higher, but note the volume here. Traded 15, 16 million shares from midweek on. Slow Stow is overbought again. We want to see this recycle, or at least prices move sideways when Slow Stow gets back oversold again. Note the move from the time that Slow Stow was oversold was $1.50, so we are looking for further upside. Superior Energy, note the big volume by price levels here. Kirby pockets right in here, and then some resistance starts to build up, eventually up to the 3210 level on this name. Note MACD and Slow Stow, prices above the 10 period moving average with a spinning top on Friday. Now, some of the names we're watching very closely are Tesoro. We've called this one over a week ago. We had a nice move from 72 almost up to 80. We're waiting for a pullback on Slow Stow to give us a better entry, possibly the 10 period moving average, which is rising, or a pullback to breakout. So Tesoro is on our short list. Walter Energy I like a lot for a cheap name that's trading a lot of shares. Note the volume picking up here. We're in this big Kirby pocket that could see prices rise up to 550, the descending 200 period moving average, very quickly. So this is one we might take a small position on, say 1,000 shares on a Monday, Tuesday, to see how this plays out. Note Bollinger Bands are both moving higher, so that indicates we could see a grind. Slow Stow is getting overbought, and MACD is above its signal line. Note the volume though. So this looks pretty good. We would like a pullback to the 10 period moving average, perhaps down in the 3 level for an entry right at this volume by price support level. So this is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com. For new traders, remember to check out these top 5 or 6 videos, which will help you with their trading strategies and with understanding our style a little bit better. Take care. We'll talk to you on the stream on Monday.